I would like to talk about the ending to Game of Thrones in an overly drawn-out manner, specifically focusing on Season 8, Episode 3, The Long Night. So if you're here and you're watching this, I'm going to assume that you've at least watched the show up until this point, because I won't be explaining the story leading up to this moment, and I'm going to assume that you're familiar with the characters and the stakes. Then let's get started. The episode starts out great, everybody's getting ready and you can see how tense the situation is and how worried everybody is. Melisandre showing up and lighting the swords on fire? Badass moment, super cool. The writers taking charge and going off into the night, while strategically idiotic, they are Dothraki, so I can forgive them for being brash. Super cool. Seeing the lights go out one by one off in the distance, fantastic visuals, a perfect way to build the tension. But then it starts to get confusing. Suddenly, a few of the writers, along with Jorah, just sorta come lazily writing back without a word. No one says anything, no one asks them what happened. No one is informing anyone else about the situation. That was weird. The whole episode has a lot of strange moments like this. Another point of contention that I've seen brought up a lot on the internet is how dark this episode in particular was. And I have to agree with this. Apparently, the cinematographer wanted the episode to have realistic lighting, and you can't see anything at night. But we're looking at dragons fighting magic eyes zombies here. I think you can add some beauty shots. Throw in a rim light, add some more fire, or just hold back a bit on the storm. The episode was incredibly sloppy and messy. Most of the time, it felt as if I were looking at vague, gritty, dirt-covered silhouettes with matted medium-length hair. I had no clue who was doing what. A counter-argument to this is that it was meant to convey a sense of panic, disorientation, and claustrophobia that comes with being on a battlefield like this. I understand the concept, but you can convey all of these things and still show us, the viewer, what is happening. The show itself did this flawlessly once already. The Battle of the Bastards is some of the best medieval warfare I've ever seen. Those shots where the camera follows Jon for a good couple of minutes are incredibly well done, both in terms of choreography and cinematography. The whole battle perfectly conveys how absolutely haunting and overwhelming it would be in a battle like this, where you don't only see things from a cinematic panning crane shot or a dolly pan through an epic-looking fight. It's gritty, it's scary, it's chaos, but it's understandable. The Long Night was not. I'm not going to spend this entire video complaining about the things I didn't like, however. What I wanted to do is offer a few suggestions of my own, things that I would have liked to see. I know this doesn't change anything, or mean anything, and at best it's overproduced fanfiction, but for my own sake and catharsis, I wanted to get some ideas out. I would like to preface this with saying that I haven't done a deep dive into the lore. I'm by no means an expert at the Song of Ice and Fire history and extended universe, if you will. I've listened to a few of the audiobooks and I am familiar with concepts like Azor Ahai and the 13th Commander, but I am most certainly wrong about how many things work. I have, however, watched the show multiple times, and this is what I'm going to be basing my thoughts on.
So what do you do all night?
Think and walk until I'm far enough away from camp that no one can hear me shitting my guts out.
As a general concept for the episode, I would have liked to see a lot less focus on the generic battle itself and keeping things more focused on our main characters. Not wholly, obviously, it's still very important to convey how overpowering by numbers the Army of the Dead is, but it seems as though they went for shooting low-hanging fruit in a barrel. By which I mean taking a simple concept and making it harder than it needs to be. Low-hanging fruit and shooting fish in a barrel being easy, and putting the fruit in a barrel, making it more complicated? Okay, listen, this metaphor felt better until I started explaining it, and I could go back and change the script, but I'm writing this linearly and I don't wanna. They made a fairly straightforward battle, very muddled and confusing. The episode still has a lot of great moments though, showing the Hound going catatonic in the face of overwhelming odds, and seeing Grey Worm basically having a panic attack at the loss of life and threat to his own was great. I liked that Arya showed a moment of weakness and needed a pep talk, showing that she is still human. I also liked the fact that Arya was the one to stab the Night King. I thought that moment on its own was fantastic, and I want to keep that. It's a great moment for her character and a nice payoff to all of her training. I've seen some people argue that because of this, Arya is now a Mary Sue, which is completely ridiculous, and if that's your stance, then you don't know what a Mary Sue is. Captain Marvel is a Mary Sue. No, I want to keep that moment. Arya killing the Night King on its own merit is a great way of subverting expectations, but I want to lead up to it a lot differently. I don't think any of the actors on this show are bad actors. Some are better than others, not naming names, but Peter Dinklage and Lena Headey are completely unrelated names that come to mind. While Emilia Clarke has a tendency to overact in some cases, I still think all of them are capable of conveying really strong emotions. And I think a lot of people are too often too quick to blame the actors rather than direction when it comes to less than stellar performances. They should have had more Grey Worm panic moments. While seeing Dany and Jon ride their dragons into battle sounds cool in concept, I think the execution left a lot to be desired. Both of their characters for most of the episode had very little agency. On a first viewing, I didn't even realize that almost all of the Dothraki essentially died out, because Dany barely got to show any emotion in reaction to it. That being said, the shot of the dragons above the clouds was amazing. Admittedly in part because it was one of the few scenes where you could actually see something. But I would gladly have sacrificed a few minutes here and there of what I'll call generic battle scenery for some stronger involvement of Dany actively burning more of the hordes and showing more rage and sadness in the face of her people essentially dying out. A lot of the episode could remain mostly the same in terms of its structural points, up until the moment where Jon enters the courtyard. One major point I want to change before this moment, however, is the scene where the Night King raises the dead. Let's just have Jon get to the courtyard without that scene. Maybe his dragon gets injured in battle with Viserion, the Ice Dragon, or maybe he sees his friends struggle in the castle and can't resist but land to help out and protect them. But we have Jon in the courtyard, and the Night King has arrived at the Godswood, where Theon has died. Jon is desperately trying to make his way to Bran at the Weirwood Tree, but he gets cut off by the Ice Dragon. We see him struggle to make his way around, but he can't find an opening, and the dragon is going ballistic. As Jon makes a break for it, maybe he tries to stealth and sneak around or climb over something, but the dragon smashes the wall, knocking Jon off, his attempt ending in failure. Jon is now caught out, face to face with Viserion. The dragon roars at Jon, and Jon shouts back as a flock of crows take off. And he gets into a battle stance, not because he's expecting to take out the dragon in single combat, but because he's out of options. As the dragon rears back to burn Jon, we see a close-up of its face, and just before the roar, its eyes glaze over and go white. Bran has warged into Viserion and is now in control. This further cements Bran's proficiency in warging and solidifies his threat against the Night King, making it more clear to us as the audience as to why the Night King wants him out. Bran, as the dragon, smashes a path for Jon with its tail, clearing the way and leaving an opening for Jon to get to the Godswood, while giving the Whites a moment of confusion and showing them that the humans are an actual threat. Here, I want Jon to have his hero moment. The White Lieutenants go into battle and Jon fights. He manages to take out one, maybe two, and we see a minor group of zombies go down, these being the few turned by these particular lieutenants. We have a moment of relief. It seems like a second wind. The enemy forces are diminishing and 2 Whites are down. This is when I want the Night King to pull back his lieutenants, stare down Jon, and start to raise his arms. We see a close-up of Jon realizing what is about to happen. Cut to dead bodies on the battlefield. Maybe Ed's face. The camera dollies in slowly, holds on a close-up of Ed's lifeless face, and his eyes open, blue. Next episode, episode 4, we fade in on eyes after eyes opening, maybe slow motion reaction shots of characters realizing, Jaime and Brienne, the Hound, people having their oh shit we're fucked moment. Now everyone comes back, all of our fallen added to the Night King's army, our hero's only option is retreat. This is where we could also see Jorah make his last stand to protect Dany, as in the original episode, and we focus back on the people hiding in the crypts, as the dead rise from the tombs within. This moment in the original episode was great. I loved the unforeseen consequence of the Night King's ability to raise the dead, including the bodies in the crypt. But I want this moment to act as a reason for the people hiding in the crypt to have to escape. Here we could see Tyrion maybe protect Sansa by stabbing an undead coming at them from behind. And remember that dagger that Arya gave Sansa in the actual episode that she never ended up using? Let's have her use that. As they flee from the crypt, pushing the doors open, Sansa gets a little moment of her own where she frantically stabs an undead running at them. The character of Sansa has become one of the more cerebral characters on the show, and I think this is a very fitting role for her, but after how much physical violence she's had to endure, I would have liked to see her defend herself.
The Lady of Winterfell has a nice ring to it.
So, our heroes scramble to get away from the growing masses of newly risen undead. Dany lands with her dragon, Jon gets on his dragon, and Bran, still in the ice dragon's body, is seen smashing down zombies. Our main cast climb atop the closest dragon, and maybe here, Brienne can make her final stand to protect Jaime, who gets overwhelmed by undead as he's trying to escape. Not being able to properly fight off the horde, Brienne comes to his aid, and she could help both him and Sansa, who is escaping from the crypts, to get to the dragons. But we echo the scene of Jon beyond the wall, where Brienne just can't make it to the dragons, and shouts at Jaime to take off. We have a moment where we see Brienne's last stand in slow motion as our dragons take flight, and she goes down, protecting the Stark children as was her sworn oath to Catelyn, and giving her life to save her forbidden love in Jaime. A newly anointed knight's death. As our heroes fly over the remaining battle beneath, we see the Night King in the Godswood lock eyes with Jon. While his mind is in the Ice Dragon, Bran's body still remaining behind. The Night King is put at an impasse. We've previously seen on the show that killing a human who is capable of warging can trap their mind inside of another creature. In the book, this is, as I understand it, how Jon survives dying, his final word being ghost as his mind took shelter in the direwolf, awaiting his body to be resurrected. Bran, as the Three-Eyed Raven, is now trapped inside what is essentially the immortal body of Viserion, the undead ice dragon. The Night King can't kill his body until his consciousness returns without risking Bran forever being in control of Viserion, and Viserion basically can't die unless the Night King dies. It's like a Harry and Voldemort kind of deal.
Winterfell has fallen. Brienne is dead. They are coming. They are coming.
We can see our protagonists land somewhere and regroup, take stock, and count their losses. I want Jon, Dany, Arya, Sansa, Tyrion, Jaime, Melisandre, Grey Worm, Missandei, Davos, Sam, and Tormund and the Hound here. Brienne, Jorah, Lyanna, Ed, and Beric Dondarrion are dead. We could lose more people. I wouldn't mind Varys dying, but he could have a larger role to play, so I could go either way. The plot armor in the original episode is already extremely strong, and admittedly this still leaves a lot of main characters alive. Losing Brienne, however, would make for a stronger emotional impact, I think. Personally, I absolutely adore Tormund, but he could fall during the Battle of Winterfell as well, though I don't have a good death scene for him in mind. As our heroes gather themselves, Melisandre can explain about Bran's trapped mind, and we could introduce a time constraint in that Bran might not be able to return if he stays inside Viserion for too long. This having been hinted at earlier in the show, where I think it's Jojen who advises Bran to not get lost in his direwolf summer.
Spending too much time in summer skin is dangerous. If you're trapped in summer for too long, you'll forget what it was to be human.
So our cast will have to organize a plan to rescue Bran, Operation Bran Plan, and rather than wait around for the Night King to come to them, they now have to go to him. We'll have some character moments and take a break from the fight, the eye of the storm. But as we near the middle of the episode, Jon, Dany, Arya, Melisandre, Grey Worm, Tormund, and the Hound, depending on who's around, will have to go back. The good fighters and leaders. Under the cover of darkness the following night, our heroes fly back to Winterfell and touch down at the edge of the forest, where Arya and the Hound split off to go one way, and Jon, Tormund, and Grey Worm go another. Dany and Melisandre taking to the skies again. I want this to be a stealth operation. In the original episode, we have this kind of, in my opinion, awkward and out-of-place library scene, where Arya has to Resident Evil her way through an extremely silent room full of zombies. I would just like to quickly point out that if the realistic lighting in the original episode was so important, to the point where we sacrificed any visual clarity, what happened to the audio as soon as someone closed the door? Anytime anyone went indoors, the sound of the battle outside just cut out. It was dead silent, to the point of walkers being able to hear blood dripping on the floor. It's like the episode suddenly fails at auditory object permanence. But I would like to use this concept in the return to Winterfell. Here, it makes sense for the environment to be silent, as most of the undead are in power save mode, sentry mode, whatever. We could have a few moments of horror as our heroes try to sneak through the ruined castle, where we come face to face with some familiar faces, seeing undead, or maybe zombie Brienne, to really punch the hearts of people. Jon, Grey Worm, and Tormund make their way through and emerge again at the God's Wood, where we see another sort of standoff situation happening. And maybe Grey Worm stealth kills another lieutenant as Jon rushes the Night King. Now they fight. Grey Worm and Tormund holding off some of the undead at the gates, Jon fighting the Night King. This is the fight. We see them holding their own, and maybe this is where the Hound can break through from somewhere, coming to help from the opposite side of the battle, having flanked the Godswood. As the battle goes on, we see Tormund, the Hound, and Grey Worm standing their ground, but just barely. Jon is tiring, and he gets wounded by the Night King. We get a shot of Jon fallen, determination and acceptance replacing fear in his face. He gets back up and lunges at the Night King, but right before landing his final blow, the Night King plunges his sword through Jon's stomach. A close-up of Jon looking into the Night King's face, the Night King looking satisfied. But Jon doesn't seem upset. His eyes flicker to Bran. The Night King looks around at Bran, who just then opens his eyes to meet the Night King's. Now, we get Arya's moment. The Night King's sword stuck in Jon, he has no means of defense, and Arya jumps from the weirwood tree onto him as he turns around. And the scene plays out as in the original episode, where she does the dagger drop and stabs. The Night King freezes, and there's a beat, before he shatters. The following scene plays out as before, where we see the dead crumble and the remaining lieutenants shatter. Dany landing with her dragon, and her and Melisandre jumping off, running up to help our heroes escape. But we see Jon on his knees. Meeting Dany's eyes, he slumps over, bleeding out. What was briefly a moment of triumph turns to fear and panic as Jon's life is about to slip away, and Dany and Arya frantically run up to try to help. Dany, out of panic, turns to Melisandre. Remembering how things turned out last time she tried to save someone with magic after being stabbed, she pleads to Melisandre to help Jon. The Red Woman says that the Lord of Light is finished with Jon and that she doesn't think that he would come back again. But Bran speaks up, telling them that there is a way, having seen how the children of the forest created the Night King in the first place by plunging a dragonglass dagger into his heart under a weirwood tree. So, out of options, the Hound and Tormund hold Jon up against the tree. As Jon regains consciousness, he finds himself face to face with Dany, holding a dragonglass dagger. We get a moment of fear in the face of uncertainty where Dany, crying, puts her hand on Jon's cheek, apologizing. Jon, with great effort, whispers to her to do it, and Dany plunges the dagger into Jon's chest. His eyes fly open and start to go blue. We get an aerial shot of Winterfell, some scenery shots of the fallen castle. Everything is silent. Bodies strewn everywhere. Cut back to the group gathered in front of the tree. As Jon rises, his eyes blue. Jon now having taken the place of the Night King as an original White Walker. The king in the true north, and the ice to Dany's fire. We hold on Jon, a full body shot of him standing up. The others back away apprehensively. And Jon starts to raise his arms. We could end the episode here, or we could wrap things up a bit more neatly, but for the remaining 2 episodes, I want Jon, as the new Night King, to join forces with Dany, her dragons, and her remaining followers in the battle against Cersei. Cersei's plan being to kill whomever's left after the dead attack the north.
The dead have broken through the wall. Good.
To me, this feels like the one outcome she did not foresee. After her acting all cocky, refusing to join forces in the name of the living, I don't think she would ever have considered the dead joining Dany. I do think it has to end with Cersei dying.
That's disappointing.
Who in the end does the deed, I'm not too picky about, but I don't think it should be Arya or Dany. Maybe Jaime if I had to pick, or maybe she does it herself, realizing that she is about to lose, as we've seen her consider before. But in the end, I want Jon to take the place of the new King in the North, referring to the North beyond the Wall, and in turn brokering a peace between the dead and the living, as he did before with the Free Folk. Sansa taking the place as Lady of Winterfell and overseeing the restoration of her house. Personally, I want Tyrion, Grey Worm, Missandei, Sansa, and Arya to live. Tormund could live to lead the remaining Free Folk. I'm not sure what I want to happen with Dany. I wouldn't mind if Jaime ended up taking the Iron Throne. I think his personal growth has changed him enough to where he would be good at it, and I think his arc in general is one of the strongest in terms of character. In the end, anyone at all sitting on the Iron Throne doesn't break the wheel, as Dany put it, so maybe no one should rule. No matter who ends up on top, there's gonna be another who wants the spot, because when you play the Game of Thrones, you win, or you die. Thank you for listening to me ramble on about one particular plot point in a fictional fantasy show about magic and politics. I hope you found some entertainment value in this. I'm sure there are gonna be things that I mentioned that contradicts the lore somewhere, and I'm sure that someone's gonna point that out in some comment. It's a video! I can't change it after the fact. As I said, this is just my personal take on what could have been. I would like to quickly point out that this is written and recorded between the episodes 3 and 4, so at the time of recording this, I haven't actually seen episode 4 yet. However, if you want to listen to me talk about another magical saga, I have a video about the latest installments in the Harry Potter universe. And if fantasy is more your thing, I also made a video about the ending to The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. But for now, take care. Bye!